Alone, once again, Maractus forces itself off of the warm ground and wipes its sap-like tears. Maractus has had enough now. If no one wants it as is, then Maractus will learn a new move and show it off as much as possible. Yes, that should get someone's attention. The trouble is, Maractus doesn't know where it is. It knows it's in a town somewhere just past the desert. It even knows it's just outside the local Pokémon Center. However, Maractus has no idea how to get back to the desert. Nor does it know where to go in this town. Maractus didn't want to just wander around aimlessly or accidentally end up in another wild Pokemon's home. So it thinks. It thinks back to when it was with its trainer. Still bitter in its mind, Maractus keeps thinking, how did its trainer survive? Where would he camp out? Where would he go when he needed shelter? Maractus couldn't quite think up a good answer. So it decided to just go back into the Pokémon Center. Maractus waddles up to the automatic doors and walks through them once they open. It's only been around 5 minutes since it was last in here, but it already feels different inside. Maybe it's because Maractus wants to be here this time? After stepping through the automatic doors, Maractus walks over to a small waiting area with a few comfy looking seats and some magazines strewn out on the table in the middle of the seats. Maractus flicked through them, but found nothing useful. Just magazines on beauty products for trainers and their Pokemon, a magazine full of local spots to eat, and even a magazine on Pokemon contest winners. Maractus put the magazines down, but as it did, it noticed another magazine on the rack in the corner of its eye. Maractus turns to face the rack, where even more magazines and leaflets lay. There was a magazine that had a mostly black cover with some blue grading on it, and Trainer Camping issue number 102 in big white letters strewn across the top. Maractus picked up the camping magazine and started to flick through it. Nothing stuck out to it as particularly helpful for its current predicament, until it came across a section that read, Camping for Grass Pokemon. This was it. This is what Maractus was looking for. Maractus read on, hoping to discover where it could go. If you are looking for grass Pokemon, the best place to look would be a forest or field, since grass Pokemon love tall grass, trees, nature, and flowers. Of course, it could be home to other type of Pokemon, such as flying and bug types. But never be discouraged by this. You may find something rare that you may never have found elsewhere. Maractus was bored of reading already, but out of sheer necessity, it did so regardless of its boredom. If you're looking for some special grass types, then look no further than the Desert Resort. You don't even have to camp while you're there, because the Desert Resort is also a hotel and spa for trainers and their Pokemon. Out in this area, you should be able to find Maractus and Cacnea, two grass-type Pokemon that are often mistaken as cacti. The Desert Resort sounded like the perfect place for Maractus to go. In the magazine, it found directions to the resort. Maractus looked around itself, looking out for anyone who could be watching, then turns back to the magazine and quickly rips out the page with the directions on it. Maractus carefully places the magazine back and then runs out of the Pokemon Center, hoping it hadn't been caught damaging property and stealing. Once outside, Maractus quickly looks back before getting to safety behind a tree. Maractus slowly takes out and opens the page with directions on it, while checking around itself to make sure it hasn't been spotted. Then it checks the page and examines the directions. Realizing that it's not too far back to the desert, Maractus jumps for joy with a huge smile on its face. Before setting off to the desert, Maractus thinks back to Charlotte, the sweet young trainer who already had a Maractus. Sighing loudly to itself, Maractus sets off, trying to ignore the fact that it will most likely never see her again. Maractus really liked Charlotte. and it was sure she didn't mean to hurt its feelings, but hurt is all Maractus could feel as its weary legs finally reached the entrance to the desert. It may have only taken about 20 minutes from a Pokemon Center, but Maractus still doesn't feel fully recovered from the whole ordeal it's been through these past few days. Maractus checks the directions once more. First, it has to get to the oasis just past the first few massive sand dunes in front of it, and then it needs to take a right from there and continue that way for about an hour before it reaches the start of the resort area. Maractus takes one look back at the village and vows to itself that it won't go back to civilization until it learns a move that no Maractus has ever learned before. Of course, Maractus has to think about what move to try to learn first. Maractus begins to climb the first sand dune. This dune is the most solid since it's so close to the town it just came from. It's an easy climb, but poor Maractus still isn't used to this kind of thing, so it takes a while to get to the top. Once reaching the top, Maractus remembered how easy it is to slide all the way down, so it decides to actually try this to make quick time on the journey to the desert resort. Maractus gets close to the edge of the sand dune, then puts one foot in front of the other, softly planting itself into the sand so it doesn't tumble over. Maractus then does a small hop over the edge and starts cruising down. Maractus enjoyed the wind blowing by its spiny body, and the way it was able to rush down in one easy motion was exhilarating. With a smirk and a newfound determination, Maractus climbs the next dune. This time it was less solid and had more loose sand, but sliding down the dune was easier than before because of this. In fact, Maractus felt like it had a bit of a knack for sliding down these dunes. It's the first time in a long time that it actually felt proud of itself. The third dune was just as easy, so Maractus managed to make rather quick time. Upon reaching the bottom of the final dune, Maractus spots the oasis up ahead, along with several other Pokemon. Still worried about being an outcast and a traveller, Maractus decides the best course of action would be to take a quick rest there, have a little bit of water, and then head back out towards the desert resort. Food will be a bonus, but Maractus reckons it can get some food closer to the resort. Maractus reaches the oasis and none of the Pokemon pay practically any attention to it. It wasn't in a negative or ignorant way, but more like an acknowledgement that anyone is welcome as long as they don't cause a disturbance. Maractus goes over to the water, cups its hands, dips them into the water and brings some water to its face, taking a large sip. The water has this peculiar taste to it, a slight tang, probably from the minerals in the sediment at the bottom of the oasis. Maractus looks around for a bit of food, but doesn't see anything that's edible. Maractus shrugs this off and decides to plant itself for a quick rest and absorb some sunlight. The scorching sunlight blazes its way into Maractus' body, giving it plenty of energy for the second half of its journey. After a good 15 minutes of basking, Maractus uproots itself out of the hot sand and calmly assesses its surroundings to regain its bearings. Maractus is so close now to a real place for it to stay and train. It can taste the freedom in the air as a soft breeze passes by it. Still determined, Maractus plods along, wading through a mostly deserted part of the desert, only seeing a few Skorupi pop out of the sand every now and then. For a while, Maractus worries that it's actually going the wrong way, until it spots a large white building in the distance. There it is! Maractus finally found salvation. Up ahead lies a large white building, glowing from the harsh sunlight. Maractus picks up its pace a bit, not even realising how excited it is. Along the way, Maractus notices more and more vegetation. A grand mix of desert, grass and shrubs plotted around. Maractus even spots a friendly Maractus waving at it. Maractus waves back and decides not to disturb the friendly Maractus further, as they've planted themselves deep into the sand. It must be about to take a nap, Maractus thought. Nearing the building now, Maractus spots a berry bush with ripened orange berries ready to eat. Maractus waddles on over to the bush and picks 4 big juicy berries. 1 for now, 1 for tonight, 1 for tomorrow morning, and 1 for tomorrow afternoon. Maractus looks around and notices that there are several other berry plants in the surrounding area. This is great, there's plenty to eat, Maractus thought to itself cheerily. Maractus decides to plant itself into the ground, surrounded by all the berry bushes, and eats the orange berry it had just picked. The sweet yet tangy flavour burst into its mouth as soon as Maractus bit into it. After chewing it a bit, Maractus noticed a pleasant spice to the berry. After gobbling up the berry, Maractus fell asleep, even right through the night, which it wasn't planning to do. With a unique goal in mind, Maractus snores softly into the night.